sends his best regards to everyone, sends his apologies if he can't join you this evening, but he's actually with a very important person here in Israel tonight. He's with Karen Pierce, who is currently our political director in the Foreign Office, but as Joanna knows, was announced this week as our first ever female ambassador to the UN. So we like to think of the British government that we're making some progress, and I was doing my research earlier this afternoon, and I'm very pleased to say that 57%
השגרירה הראשונה שלנו
in Israel are female, but we need to work harder because of the 29 British ambassadors to Israel since the very first one, we've had 29 men, which is unacceptable. So Joanna, you will be welcome back to Tel Aviv whenever you wish to be the first ever British female ambassador to Israel. But we've got a fantastic panel this evening, and this is an issue of great importance to us here in Israel. It's an issue of great importance to the British government, to the Foreign Office. It's a personal priority of the Foreign Secretary, Boris Johnson, who some of you might know. He's been here a couple of times in the last couple of years. So it's going to be a really, really interesting discussion. I'll hand over to Tal, and many thanks to Tal for agreeing to facilitate this conversation this evening. And my challenge to you is to be bold, generally, but particularly tonight in challenging the panel with some really, really interesting questions. So thank you very much. Over to Tal.
So hi everyone, I'm very excited to be here, and I have to say that I think these are definitely exciting days to be a woman. The Me Too campaign, the global and viral Me Too campaign, is, some may say, it's the next stage of the feminist revolution, and you can't argue that there are unprecedented women all around the world are speaking up in an unprecedented manner. We almost had a female president in the United States. We have two women leading two of the most prominent European countries. We have a French and Canadian government filled with women. But I do suggest that we cool off the champagnes. Because when we take a look at the figures, and I just took a look at the figures, and there was a research that was published last month by the World Economic Forum, which basically says that it's going to take more than 100 years to reach full gender equality, and in the past year, the gender gap has grown. In the UK and in Israel, there are record numbers of women lawmakers, but still we comprise only about 30% of the seats, which is much less than our percentage in the population. If we look at the cabinet positions, the statistics are even more grim. So I am honored to be joined by two very prominent and strong women to discuss what can be done. I will open it up for questions later on, so please write down whatever you want, and you might be even, I am encouraging you to be even bolder than me. Than myself. I will present our guests, and so I will start with Tzipi Livni, who I think is probably the most prominent Israeli politician today. Former foreign minister, served in 8 different cabinet positions, and has set the record for the most government roles held by an Israeli woman. She was the first female vice PM, and of course she led multiple rounds of peace talks with the Palestinians, so we will be discussing negotiations. And Joanna Roper, who is the first British Special Envoy for Gender Equality. Prior to that, she was a senior diplomat in Beijing, Tokyo, and Islamabad, and she previously had the Foreign Office's China department and has been working on national security issues for years. So my first question will be to both of you. Should we be happy or should we be sad? Should we be looking on the bright side or should we be looking on the grim side?
We should be active. I mean, to make the world better for women, to do each one of us in her position, whatever she can, in order to give space and place and support more and more women. It was mentioned that the UK is going to have the first female ambassador to the United Nations. I nominated the first Israeli female ambassador to the United Nations. I just saw it yesterday, by the way. And I believe that this is a responsibility of all of us, and there is no time to be optimistic or pessimistic. It's a tough neighborhood in a tough world, but it is changing on some issues for the best, me too, and I think that men understand that they cannot do whatever they want anymore, but yet we have also other changes that are for worse. And this is politically correct is not, doesn't exist anymore, populism, everything that is changing. And therefore we need to act in both sides of the same, of this equation in a way.
So you ask, can we be optimistic, are we still pessimistic? And I think we can be both. And I think we have to be both. We have to be optimistic because there has been a huge amount of change in recent decades, and we have to recognise that and celebrate where there has been progress. You talk about women in Parliament, and in the UK we have the most diverse Parliament that we have ever had, with some 60-odd MPs, women MPs, and the greatest number of minority ethnic MPs as well. And that's something to be celebrated, but it's not enough. And I think that you talk about the World Economic Forum, and you're absolutely right. That WEF report says that we are actually probably going backwards in some respects around the world, and it will take some 217 years to close that gap. And that means that collectively our daughters, our granddaughters, our great-granddaughters are probably not going to be able to reap the benefit unless we really continue to make real active progress and interventions to make this happen. But I think, to answer your question, I think, you know, we have seen progress. We can go in and talk a bit more about what that progress looks like, but we have to keep going. Let's not stop now.
So what can be done? I mean, when you look at the 30%, and we do see that there are parliaments around the world that have more than that, and there are, of course, parliaments that have less than that, but we have 30%. So is it time to support affirmative action? Is it time to support gender quotas? Should that be our goal? Should that be a way that we should be promoting women equality? Because we do know that even though there are 30% women MPs, we don't see the women's agenda and female agenda promoted. I think I just saw 6 resolutions were feminist resolutions, I would define them, were actually dismissed in the House of Commons. Of 6 suggestions by a committee that were supposed to promote gender equality were rejected. So how do we, if we got 30%, we broke the record, how do we continue to break the record?
So, so I think I think if you look at some of the progress we've made, for example, on women on boards, I know it's a different environment, but the other thing we want to do is get more women into business and more women onto boards, because we know that companies have women on boards, they are more profitable, they're more successful, they attract investors, customers. It's a really good thing. And what we did in the UK is commission research, and then sort of came up with a couple of reports that encouraged our top companies, our sort of FTSE 100, FTSE 300 companies, to aim for a target of 25% of women on boards, and various other targets. We didn't introduce quotas, but by making a very visible commitment and encouraging those companies to think creatively about how you could bring women both onto the board level, but also at the executive level underneath, how you create a pipeline, how you create a pool of talent to bring women up through the grades, I think is a really powerful thing that can be done. And that's a method that we can be using across lots and lots of other sectors as well. I think creating talent, nurturing talent, supporting women, whether it's sponsorship, mentoring, lots and lots of ways of demonstrating why having women at all levels in all sectors is so powerful and is successful. The economic argument, the business argument, the political argument, you know, is halfway there. One other thing that we're doing at the moment, which you may have seen and you may go on to, is about the gender pay gap in the UK. And we have introduced legislation that makes it obligatory for organisations of 250 people, employees or more, to measure their gender pay gap, the various measures, but the difference between mean pay for men and for women. And the average is about 18%. And in some sectors it's much smaller, and in some sectors it's quite a lot larger. And all of those organisations have to publish by April next year that gap and what they're going to do about it. So again, no quota, but a legal requirement to be transparent about what's holding women back.
Okay, firstly, I'm in favor. I support affirmative action and legislation accordingly. I discovered when I was in charge on privatization in Israel, and basically in charge on all the government-owned companies, that even though we are 50% and more, they were only 3% of directors of the women in boards in all the government companies authority, in the government-owned companies. And after the legislation of 1995, I think, it was changed to 30, and now it's even more. Because this legislation gave me the possibility to force, in a way, ministers to nominate women. They didn't want to, because women were not strong enough in politics, and they wanted, to give these positions to their own supporters in politics, but we forced them to change it. This is one thing. Secondly, security, security, security. Women in security. I just came from Halifax a few days ago, and there was, for the first time, it's a global security conference in Canada. So they support women, and we have them in the cabinet, and there was a big gathering in Toronto speaking about involvement of women. And so for the first time, and they were very proud for having a panel of women in peace, involving women, United Nations resolution and all this. And it was really great, and for the first time, see women talking about peace and involvement of women in peace negotiations. But what I said there is that that's nice. But I prefer to have men talking about the need to have women in peace negotiations and to have a panel of women talking about security. Because we live in a world of perception, and especially in this region, security is one of the major reasons for people to vote for their candidates in elections. And still, you said we almost had an American president, you almost had an Israeli prime minister, but always there's the question of who's going to answer the 3 a.m. phone call on security, and therefore we need to be more involved and bridge the gap of perceptions, images, and reality. And third thing, and I want to put it on the table, it's going to be less nice. We have not a clash, but we have in some places more religious parts in politics. So on one hand, we are moving forward, and you can see women in different places. Even in the army in Israel, when I was young, when I was in the army, I couldn't. I mean, and by the way, I accepted it. I said, okay, I cannot be a pilot, fine. But later, women went to court, and now you have more women in combat unit. But yet, on the other side, you have more and more religious parties that are against it, and you see it, and the trends of religion, or taking the religion to more extreme places, are not only in Israel and in Judaism, but also in other parts in the region, and this creates a clash, and we need to address it.
I'm going to go back. When you were talking, as you were leading the negotiations, did you ever enter a room of negotiators in which you were not the only woman?
No.
So here's my question. And it's really a novice question. It's very naive. So we have Resolution 1325, and we have women who, like you, who are negotiators, and still peace and diplomacy, when we look at the Iran deal, when we look at the the big deals that have been negotiated in the world in the past few years, there might be one woman there, Federica Mogherini.
Yeah, I'm talking about decision makers, because I could see also on the Palestinian side, by the way, advisors, lawyers, some of them were, well, one of them was a woman. When I was foreign minister, we had Condi Rice as the Secretary of State, and now we have Mogherini, and so you could see once in a while women being more involved in this.
Do you think that if the chief negotiator you were facing was not, I'm going to just name drop, was Hanan Ashrawi and not Saib Arikat, do you think it would be easier for you to find a dialogue?
I don't want to mention names, but I do think that women are negotiating in a different manner. It is less about ego. It is more about understanding what are the problems of the other side and then trying to solve a problem. We are more problem solvers. And part of my experience is that also on the Israeli side sometimes, I was not the only one, and men are trying to force the other to accept the resolution. What I was trying to do is to understand the problem and then to find a way to move forward in a common understanding. And, for example, talking about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, after negotiating, we said, okay, we are not going to force our narratives on the other. So part of the agreement is an understanding that we are going to live in with our two different narratives about history, and the story is not about who is more just or who has more rights on the entire land, but how we solve the problem. And just to share with you a small example, but I think that we were talking about a Palestinian state, and we still wanted to be demilitarized. And the Palestinians said, no. And somebody came from the defense ministry, you know him, but that's important. He said, but you don't imagine, do you really think that you are going to have your own army and Air Force and this and that? And, I listened, they say, okay, it's going to be a huge clash. And then I asked them, listen, but why you insist on this? Don't you want, to have the state? Why do you need it? And they say, we don't need it. I said, okay, so why do you insist on this? They said it's about our dignity and about our sovereignty. I said, okay, fine, I can understand it. Now, let's take other examples of other states. In Cyprus, you still have a British base in Cyprus. Germany, because of after the Second World War, took limitation. Japan took limitation. Sinai, we were talking about Egypt as really, Sinai is demilitarized, and it doesn't say that we don't respect Egypt. And therefore, I gave them the possibility to say, okay, we are not going to undermine or as Netanyahu now is saying, state minors. I didn't say state minors. I said it's state, it's your state, but you're going to make the decision as a sovereign state. But frankly, the first article of the agreement would say that we agree to create a Palestinian state. The second article would say that the sovereign independent Palestinian state agrees that it would be demilitarized. And I said, and frankly, without the second article, you're not going to get the first article. And we agreed. But it took us 2 meetings, and at first it was the blame game and everything, and the other meeting was understanding what is the problem and giving it an answer that respects the other side.
When you were appointed to this job just earlier this year, to your post as the first envoy in our Foreign Office, and so what is your responsibility and what is this scope? And how much of your job focuses on this, on the issue of peace and diplomacy and bringing women's voices to the front and to the negotiation room in these topics?
Thank you. So you're right, this is the first time we've had a special envoy for gender equality. I think it came about for a number of different reasons. I think, first of all, the UK government does a huge amount on gender equality within our development department, DFID, as you may know, the Foreign Office, the Ministry of Defence, our Home Office. We have a Government Equalities Office that looks at our domestic policy. We have lots and lots of work that's taking place across the bits of government. And that was all of this is fantastic. And what we wanted to do was join up those dots so we all understood a little bit more about what we were doing. So that was the first thing. I think also internationally, we have led the way and placed gender equality as a really important part of our foreign diplomacy approach as well. All of those sort of came together at a time when also the Foreign Secretary was travelling, and he saw the impact that education, getting young people into the schools, particularly girls, and helping them stay there, because that's really important, and the impacts that that can have. So all of this came together, and so we created my role to help support gender equality as, if you like, integrated into our foreign policy as much as our domestic policy, our development policy. So my role is a Foreign Office role, but it looks to support the work of all of the British government. So when I'm travelling, and I travel a lot, you know, I end up talking about all sorts of policies. And we've come up with a structure recognising that gender inequality can look very different in different parts of the world. So one model is not going to fit all contexts. I think that's really important. But what we have got is a three-pillar approach. And the first pillar is wanting women and girls to be equal. So that's looking at access to opportunity, access to education, the sorts of things that might hold women and girls back. The second pillar is around empowerment, economic empowerment, political participation, which is where we started, and women having voices and decision-making capabilities around a mediating table, for example. And the third pillar is around being safe and secure. So that's forced marriage, honour killings, and gender-based violence, sexual violence in conflict. And that means that every embassy, every mission in our network is able to say, this is what we are doing to have a foreign policy that consciously and consistently delivers for women and girls around the world. And it's about how do we engage men and boys, because very much part of the solution, agents for change, you talked about he for she and me too. Absolutely, we need to make sure that we're working with partners to make sure that we are approaching gender equality in the right way. One of the things, so this is your question to me, is around the participation of women in 1325 in these sorts of contexts. And I think it's a really important part of what we want to see. We have, like many other countries, our own national action plan on women, peace and security. We're going to launch that in the next couple of months. We're looking at how we can support and work with others to really try and bring more women mediators into the realm, so we have more of a pool of people who we can bring into negotiations as well. So that's really really important for us. And for those of you who've been to Wilton Park, we have a couple of events coming up on exactly these topics as well. So the short answer to your question is that it remains very, very important, but it's within a broader context of gender equality within our foreign policy.
And I just have one more question to both of you. And then, as I was doing my research, I saw this McKinsey report that says that $12 to $28 trillion could be added to global economy if women played an equal role in the market. And so here's my question. How is it that in everywhere in the world we see that the rules of the market win and capitalism wins, but it's not winning the patriarchy? How is it that it's so strong? Why aren't the rules of the market working here?
Maybe, I don't know, but maybe because that the price that men have to pay, according to their view, positions, images and perceptions of women, is higher than what they are going to get from economic perspective if we would do and act according to our real potential. Maybe.
Gosh, where do you start? That is a phenomenal figure. And I've read that report. It came out in September 2015, so go and have a look at that, as well as the World Economic Forum that we started off talking about. And you just think, what a waste of talent, what a waste of capability, and we have to understand why that is the case. And I think there are lots of reasons. I think I think it's different in different parts of the world. So, for example, for the UK, how do we encourage women to be able to stay in a role that they've been recruited for? That's things like flexible working, or understanding how women can work in a different way and balance different responsibilities. It's looking at different parts of the world where perhaps women take on a greater role in the informal sector rather than the formal sector. So they're not being counted, or they're being in very low paid types of work, and there's more that we could be doing around that. It's how do we look at our supply chains in our trade and make sure that they are being assessed through an equality lens as well. And there's lots of really good work that shows that if you have an equality or a gender lens through your supply chain, then again it works really, really well. It's much profitable, more successful. We touched on it earlier as well, which is around perceptions and stereotypes and the sorts of roles that women might feel or are being sort of pushed towards. Whereas in the UK, we've got a big push to try and get women and girls into STEM, science, technology, engineering, maths, because it's woefully, women are woefully underrepresented there. There are lots and lots of reasons, I think, and economic empowerment and economic opportunity is a big part of what we would like to see and work with others as well. So, again, leading from the top, showing the vision, showing the way, and then making the case, the economic case that having more women in your company is a real benefit. Not just because it's the right thing to do, but because actually it really starts to pay off in business terms and economically, sort of commercial terms too.
Okay, so I will just, if anyone who wants to ask a question, raise a hand and just identify yourself and introduce yourself.
For the questions, apologies, really, really quickly, but there's a car blocking one of the neighbors' cars, and we just want to make sure we don't want to disturb the neighbors. So the car number, it's a white Kia, and it's 9639411.
Hi, I'm Daphne from the Geneva Initiative. We're an Israeli-Palestinian peace NGO. We have offices in Ramat and in Ramallah. So every year we train dozens of Israeli and Palestinian women to become more prominent and active in the realm of peace and security. It's not our main strategy, but it's definitely something that we're passionate about. And following up with these graduates of our programming, one of the things that we see is that often they lack the networking and the mentorship that men in Israel and Palestine enjoy. And I wonder if the UK has any experience in that sense of not just training talent, but also, taking women by the hand and really giving them the tools for networking and for really finding their place in the political system.
Yes, I think you touched on a really important point actually, which is how do you harness the talents and the potential that's there, but actually equipping people with the skills and capability to be able to go on and do the jobs. And I think if you look at different sectors, there are different approaches that we've taken. So it could be having a very formalised approach to building your talent pool within an organisation and making sure that they are exposed to different roles, that they have a mentor, that they're able to understand what it is, the skills and capabilities that they need for those future jobs. So looking ahead and thinking, I would like to get here, but in order to do that, I would like to learn this, 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 and then matching them up, for example. I think politically as well, looking at different parties' approach to sponsoring and nurturing talent within their own organisations as well. And throughout the civil service as well, we have programmes and schemes that match people up, our mentoring schemes, talent schemes that again look at people and where they're going and how we can equip them with those skills. And confidence. Confidence is a real, it's got to be a really powerful factor as well, because so one of the things that I did with my FCO Women hat on, which is our internal staff association looking to support women within the Foreign Office, was to look at the reasons why there were some jobs that just weren't attracting a wide pool of applicants, and in women in particular. Why was that? We needed to understand. And some of it was about confidence. And so one of the things that we employed was a more direct approach. Because we recognise that if somebody phoned you up or dropped you an email or sort of, you know, tapped you on the shoulder and said, look, I'm recruiting for this job, I want a wider pool of applicants as possible, and I'd really like it if you could apply. There's no guarantee, you know, there's no implicit guarantee, and it's not skewing the recruitment, but what it's saying is, you know, to that person that you've been recognised and, you know, actually you might stand a chance of getting that particular job. And the other thing is around role models. And I'd spent 18 months interviewing role models who had been nominated within the Foreign Office by their peers. Nothing to do with grade, it was all sorts of grades, all sorts of jobs, all sorts of backgrounds. Because I recognised that unless you can see somebody who looks a bit like you or grapples with the same decisions or has the same career path, then it's harder for people, for women in particular, to imagine yourself in a particular role. So whether it's ambassador to Israel, UN, wherever, or whether it's working in a minister's office or whatever it might be, having a role model that you can visually imagine in your career progression, I think, is also really powerful. So lots and lots of different ways of, as you've said, sort of supporting that pool of talent.
Hi, thank you. My name is Karen. I'm the director of the Thought Coalition, which is a coalition of 15 feminist organizations that promote economic equality. And my question for both of you is, I think if we look at the last few decades, as opposed to the first waves of the feminist movement, there's been a huge increase in awareness of how the patriarchy or how these social constructs affect all of the areas of our lives. Not only the right to vote, where it used to be, and it's domestic violence and sexual violence and economic discrimination and all of these different levels of problems. And it seems as though there's sort of a dilemma of, on one hand, how you create a movement that's focused, and on the other hand, how you address all of the different areas in which these things are happening. I'm wondering, on your perspective, on whether there is a movement and whether there's something that needs to be done to sort of focus the efforts to achieve greater things quicker.
Well, frankly, I think that there are different trends. On one hand, we are in a completely different situation. We see more and more women coming to positions also in the Israeli parliament. I think for the first time we have not a huge, but a number of women that are working also together in order to promote bills that are connected to women empowerment. And this is something that needs to be addressed and appreciated, because we have huge differences amongst us when it comes to other issues that are concerning Israel. It's completely different parties, completely different views, but when it comes to all these bills, we are working together. This is not something that started now. By the way, I want to be fair to other politicians. I think that it started at the end of 1998, 9, and later, but this was the beginning of a change in all the different parts of Israel society, and first and foremost it was in legislation. Now we have more problems because, speaking politically, and I said it before, because when you have ultra-Orthodox parties in the government, it's quite problematic to move forward in different bills that, according to their point of view, is against what they perceive or against what they are preaching for. I wanted to add something about networking, if I may, because this is something that I discovered personally and on other women. When we are going to work, we are working. The idea of taking or going out for a lunch or to sit with others and to discuss other matters and to smell whether there are other positions that you are doing, I didn't do it because the idea that I will take an hour off without working instead of being with my children was not acceptable. Now, I could stay at work until midnight and not come at home, but I felt that, okay, this is part of my responsibility. It's not, just fun. And I don't, maybe it changed, but I think that men has this, they know how to do this networking, and we are not doing it, or we are doing it less. And therefore, I'm thinking now, since this question was asked, what can be done in order to have more, in an understanding that I want to help other women, how we can use this in order to have a better networking amongst us, with organizations, without organizations, something that we would feel responsibility to help other women. They have the talent, but sometimes they don't have the possibility. And networking is something that usually...
I wonder if that's the key to your question, which is it's becoming more integrated into everyday life, and therefore it feels a bit more amorphous, a bit less of a movement, and a bit more into everything that we do. And I think that, Prime Minister Trudeau is a really good example where you've got men who are self-proclaimed feminists and encourage everybody to be feminists, which just means, I don't mean just, but means sort of thinking about women and equality in everything that they do. So it becomes more integrated into our life, and therefore maybe it feels less of a movement because it's become more of a, I'm not explaining this very well, but it's become more of a broad approach than a specific movement, because time has moved on, and therefore it's sort of permeating more of our everyday life. I'm not sure I've explained that very well, but I think that's why it's sort of...
by the way, since you mentioned Trudeau and Canada, this was somebody said to me, I said, okay, how come you start? They said, okay, it comes from, this is now the expectations from us. And therefore, since nobody asked them, but they knew that now it's, this is politically correct, so they're doing it. This is the expectations coming from above.
Yeah. And it's really powerful. You talk to Canadians, as you say, and it's part of their language. It's not a thing. It's just what they do, and that's really,
That was a different planet.
Yeah, if we could all move to Canada.
Canada, while in Denmark, Israel is different. Like she said, Tippi, you said that you stay with your kids. I would never think, talking to a woman saying, okay, please give me a job, because you know me. I would think, okay, please, if you think I'm qualified for the job, that's okay, but not just because I'm a woman. Men do it all the time. Say, okay, you've been with me in the army. I have a job. Yes, please. We have to start thinking politically correct. It's okay. We will talk until tomorrow. Yes? But in our classes, let's have a women party. Who said it's not okay? We have a men party, and I don't think that they lose sleep over it. Okay. So maybe we have to be like the person said, bold about it. It's okay. You can say women are whatever. We need to take care of ourselves. And that's the only thing. Because if we wait for them to give us their permission, my granddaughter.
I'm still waiting for that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You should start the party.
So in the UK we do have a women's equality party.
Actually, there was a party in Israel many years ago.
Was there?
Yeah.
The women party, which didn't succeed.
For my answer, I just wanted to answer on that there are enough democratic parties that you can be part of today, that if you cherish democracy and you want to choose your representatives and want to have women representatives, the Labour Party, the Likud Party, if women will be more involved in the political sphere, then they will be able to influence the lists as well, and not necessarily just to vote on the gender issue.
If the leaders of these parties would understand that other women are going to vote for him or her, if they would encourage more women in their own party, When I created the last party at Noah, I gave 50% of the seats to, well, it was not a lot of seats, unfortunately, but I decided to give 50% for women. But frankly, I did it because it took me some time in life, but when I discovered that I should do it, I did it. But to tell you that I was supported for doing it, no. Frankly.
Hello. So my name is Mazal Shaul. Moving and acting for political position of women in municipalities and in the member Knesset. And I would like to address the coming and important year that we are forward to election 2018. And I think that we for many years acting for mentoring, for courses, for networking of women, peer groups, and etc. And still the gap is huge. Still we have huge gap, even though we address and we have a lot of success in terms of women that are going into those political positions. And I want to ask you a question. What can be done very urgently, let's say, for this coming election in 2018 that we can do either as social organization, because we have a local, we initiated actually a partnership, ad hoc venture, joint venture of 25 organizations to act to advance this gender equality in the political. And I wonder what can be done, maybe governmental, worldwide, international, to change this in the coming election.
Well,
municipality, maybe governmental.
well, firstly, let's hope that coming elections would be the sooner the better. I think that maybe we can make a distinction between municipality and general elections, and I'll tell you why. In general elections, the reason for people to vote are mostly about the basics views about the vision for Israel, about peace and security. And therefore, I think that supporting women to get more and more power should be within the party. By supporting in internal primaries or doing something like this, because I don't see women just voting for a party because there are more women there if they believe in completely different vision for the state. I must say that when I ran for office, I was supported by women. It was really touching, moving, and it empowered me, and I hope that vice versa, that I empowered also other women, but they were all, basically they could choose to vote for me, but it was instead of other parties that were in the same camp of in terms of vision. Municipality, I think it's something different because this is more about talent, about managing quality. And maybe it's time, because we are going to have the next municipal elections in 2018, November, October. Maybe this can be an opportunity to make a campaign that would not relate to specific municipality, but to put the light on how a woman can be better in decision making for your own life in the city where you live, or something like this.
I don't think it's for me to give an opinion, but in terms of your elections, so.
Okay.
Hi, good evening. My name is Shula Keshet. I'm the Executive Director of Achoti, which means my sister, for women in Israel. And we are a Mizrahi feminist movement. Mizrahi means Jews that our origin is from Arab or Muslim countries. First of all, before my questions, my question, I would like to give you this. We are also publishing books, and this is a book, Women Creating Change, about 40 women from diverse communities in Israel that are creating changes. It's in Hebrew, Arabic, and English, so it's for you.
Thank you.
And
Thank you very much.
well, you have there my contact information also, because we have a very special store in Tel Aviv, which is called the Achoti Fair Trade Store, where we market handmade fair trade women products from all over Israel, and you're welcome to come and, you know, to buy there women products to take it back to the United Kingdom. So if you would like, you can even contact me and we'll go together. Anyway, my question is, I was listening to the fascinating interview, and as a Mizrahi feminist, which is relating, like, you know, to feminism of color, talking about double discrimination. Basically, most of the women around the world, in Israel, probably also in Britain, are being discriminated twice or three times as women and as they're related to a disadvantaged community, color community, etc. In Israel, we're talking about women of Mizrahi, Palestinian, Ethiopian women, immigrant workers, asylum seeker women. And, you know, I'm not sure that today when we are talking about feminism, if we are talking about equality, I don't think that we can, you know, skip the issue that we cannot stay on the level of hegemonic women and talk only about equality between women and men in the glass ceiling. We have to, I mean, there is a struggle of black feminism, color feminism all around the world, and if we're talking about equality, we have to talk about equality between men and women, but also equality between women and women, and you know, the glass ceiling that we're talking here today, it's so far away from most of the women in the world. So can we really talk about, you know, being optimistic when we are seeing more women in the Knesset or in the parliament, or, which is very, very important, and even there, can we not talk about who are those women? Are those, most of them are white women, or we're talking about a 1325 resolution also. We cannot talk about women in large. We have to connect feminism with politics of identity, where there we can find a double, and more than double, discriminations. So my question is for both of you, what is your perspective about that, and how do you see, with you, both of you as hegemonic women, how do you relate to these issues? How do you relate to, not talking about, you know, the underprivileged women as those that we need to educate or to give them, maybe we have to think differently. You know, maybe we have to think, okay, yes, we are women, we are discriminated in a patriarchal society, but let's talk about privileges, because those women are so smart and they are so empowered, but nobody listens. Do we listen? Thank you.
Now you will start, and then.
So I think you put your finger on a really, really important issue, the question of intersectionality, and how you're absolutely right that as a white woman, I wouldn't presume and couldn't understand the experiences of women from a different ethnic background or different background generally. So I think it is incumbent upon all of us to listen and talk with and try to empathise and understand the challenges presented by each of those different aspects of our identity. And a big part of what I do when I travel is talk and listen, really importantly, listen to the responses that I get. Because I don't want to, I said before, right at the beginning, that one size fits all doesn't fit all. And that's not what I'm trying to introduce through our foreign policy, is to have something that listens and works through our missions and talks with civil society and leaders and people involved. And that's men and women, and try and understand what the nubs of the issues are, so we can help and we can sort of work out how we can work together. So you're absolutely right, that question of intersectionality. I mean, for those of you who understand, who have read or have heard of the CEDAW, a Convention for Eliminating Discrimination Against Women, there are very specific requirements to understand those different intersectionalities. And I think at a practical level, through our policies, we need to make sure that they are reflective too. You asked whether we could be really optimistic. Given all of those challenges, and I guess I am an ultimately optimistic person, because I have to believe, and it's the second time I've used this word this evening, I have to believe in hope, I have to believe in the future, because I want the future to be better than what we were experiencing in the past. Which is not to say there won't be challenges, because we know there will be. And I don't want to sound naive or you know, unrecognising of the challenge here. But talking, dialogue, empathising, understanding, and then trying to come up with solutions between all parties, I think has got to be the way forward. But thank you for raising that really, really important issue.
Wow. No, I would like to answer this. I want to ask something since I sat here. Why the Muslim women that are here, and I think that also the religious Jewish women, are sitting in the back of the room? No, really, I ask myself whether this is part of your question. This is something that is סבבה, okay.
I do want to say that I was quite shocked to hear again and again that the religious people in Israel and the government are on the backward side of the situation. And I do want to say that I think
I'm talking politically about the ultra-Orthodox parties in the parliament.
I just think that recognizing the fact that there are many women and men that are both religious and part of, let's say it otherwise, I don't think it's helpful for any of us to make a division between the powers of light and religion in the world. I think the Enlightenment idea of religion vanishing is not happening, and therefore maybe we could find ways to cooperate. And I'm just saying, we actually sat here because we had a good talk, Jewish and Muslim women, in the other room.
Ah, okay. No, okay, fine. I'm glad. No, fine. I'm glad to hear this. I ask myself whether this is something that is connected to what you really asked, and this is the way it also happening also among women, and this is why I asked it. Firstly, secondly, I agree that we can cooperate, but I referred to the platform of the ultra-Orthodox parties, political parties in the parliament. I was not speaking about religious people, or I was talking about the representative in the parliament. That's it. Now, I want to say something. Maybe you would disagree with me. Firstly, there's a list of members of parliament that Tal made, and in the Israeli parliament, when it comes to women, you have Mizrahim or new immigrants from Russia.
Yeah, so the parliament
no, I'm talking about women. Well, yes. The real question, and this is a question. This is a question. I'm not talking. I'm not commenting. I'm not talking. I want to say something to relate to feelings in a way. Because you know, you look at me and you say you are privileged because you are Ashkenazi. I came from a family that was, in a way, not accepted by the establishment because of ideological views. And you have others that are the real question is whether I'm not underestimating inequality that was in Israel. Hopefully it's less now. I'm not trying to underestimate this, but the question is, one, do you judge just according to Ashkenazi Mizrahi? And secondly, how can we, you from your position, I am in my position, thinking about women not just through the angle of that we used to think about others. I'm open to have this discussion. I hope that others are. But talking about women and advancing women in the world, in 2008, there was the primaries between Barack Obama, black man, and Hillary Clinton, a woman. And I asked Condi Rice, she was Republican, so she didn't participate in this election. And I asked her, listen, the primaries are between a woman and a black man. You are both. You're a black woman. Who's going to win? And the answer she gave me shocked me. She said in 2008, America is not prepared for a woman yet. Now, for me, excuse me for speaking openly, I thought that it would be much more difficult for a black man to win. Because for me, being a woman, and I looked at her and I said, no. And she said, but listen, look at voting rights. The blacks got it before women. And therefore, I think that for some of us, and even me personally, for me it was the obvious. I was a lawyer, I joined politics. Well, I saw that there is discrimination, but personally I wanted to be in the Foreign Office, Minister of Justice. And it took me some time to understand that others, even other women, are not thinking the same. Even for other women in Israel, a woman making decisions on security, well, even they are not, they don't have, the confidence that this is the right thing. And therefore, since you put it on the table, I think that we should understand, because you represent something which is broader than just empowering women, it's empowering other groups. And but I think that it is more a matter of feeling from where you come from. If you are driven by the Mizrahi issue, the empowering women issue, and how can each one of us that is maybe focused on one of the issues be more understanding to those that for equality in other parts of the society, whether in Israel or other parts.
Okay, wait. I'm in a problem here. Wait. Our time is up, and there are many hands. Wait. So, and really, our time is up, unfortunately. I think we could go on forever. So what I suggest is that we give a round of questions, and everyone will have their chance to ask the question, and then each of our distinguished speakers will give their final answer.
Oh, okay.
And so everyone will have their time to say what they want to say, but the answers, and then we'll give the final answers. So let's start in the back, because I've been putting them off for a while.
Hi. My name is Esther Shushan. I am from the Ultra co-CEO in an organization named Nibcharot, which means selected or chosen. And I just want to ask, according to the issues that we deal here, what can we do about the situation here in the political system here in Israel that allows that parties in their bylaws and regulation deny women to be a part of that. And I'm talking about Shas and Yadut Torah, the two Haredi parties. And I want to ask you, Tzipi, what do you think about that? Because it's not an issue from the halakha, from the Jewish law. It's just bad manners and bad habits. And I want to ask you if you, from your experience, if you know another, in another place that, in democratic places, I mean, that something like that can be. Thank you.
Okay, let's go.
Hi, I'm Natalie Murphy. I work at the Paris Center for Peace and Innovation. My question, as we've been talking, it's important to raise each other up as women, and I wanted to ask both of you if you know of up-and-coming women in politics or movers and shakers in Israel and around the globe that we should be on the lookout for.
I'm Sabiona Rontevin from a Women Wage Peace, and I want you.
I'm wearing your.
Yeah.
There was a turquoise in this room.
I find, actually we found a linkage between the state of war and the fact that we don't live in a peaceful time, and the inequality of women. And actually there are researches that have been done in Israel which show that even though we have very good laws about equality of women, after each war or kind of war, there is a regression in women's rights. So I find a linkage, and I think that as long as we don't have peace, the possibility for Israeli women to really get equality is getting less and less. And in this sense, I'm less optimistic than I say. Although I really share the saying that you can't actually live without hope and without future. And that's actually the result of women wages. Thank you.
So I will take two more questions, and I please ask your forgiveness. So here, and I'll take another one in the back. I'm sorry. I'll try.
אני רביב הני, אני מנשים עושות שלום. רציתי
ומאיפה את?
אני מעכו במקור, 20 שנה עובדת בדרום, בפיתוח כלכלי והעצמת נשים. אני רוצה לשאול דווקא על הנושא הזה של המזרחיות, אשכנזיות, גברים, אשכנזים וגברים, נשים. כל הזמן היה לי בעיה עם העניין הזה של שריון מקום לאישה במפלגות. השאלה מה נשים באמת בכנסת ובכלל בעולם, אם יש עוד באמת עוד מדינות שמשריינים מקום לאישה. למה אישה לא יכולה להתמודד כאישה, לא כאישה, אלא כבאמת מישהי שיכולה להיות באמת חברת כנסת בגלל הכישרונות שלה והיכולות שלה. דבר שני, אני רוצה לשאול, את היית במשא ומתן, השאלה איפה היה המקום של האישה הסביבה הפלסטינית אזרחית המדינה, שאנחנו היינו כן יכולות להיות חלק מהמשא ומתן. לא הצד הפלסטיני התייחס אלינו ולא הצד הישראלי. אז איפה המקום שלכם כנשים להגיד שאנחנו רוצים עוד נשים שיהיו פה, וכי אנחנו הנשים הערביות הפלסטיניות אזרחיות המדינה יכולות להיות הגשר בעצם, כי אנחנו חיים עם היהודים פה והפלסטינים הם העם שלנו בצד השני.
ועוד שאלה אחת, and I do again apologize that we didn't have, so you two choose between you which one, okay.
My name is Maha, I'm from Copenhagen City. I'm from the third common ground. I want to speak a little bit about the woman in the Arabic society in Israel. So we all the time hear about the woman in Israel and Arabic society, basically in Islamic society, that she can do anything many things she can do in the education, in the social activities, and anything you can trust her. But if she wants to talk about election or elected, there is no place for her, not in the city, not in the
diplomat or in the Knesset or anywhere. So what we can do for her, what we can help her, and how can we do something for help her about this issue.
Okay, so that one, I'm sorry, and we're going to let each one now give your closing comments.
Well, I think that talking about Arab women representative in the parliament now, the chairperson of the Parliament Committee on Women Empowerment is Aida Toma Sliman, an Arab. And I think that this is well, maybe it's not enough, but she decided to run for office within an Arab party. I believe, and this is my answer also to the Haredi women, well, there was a legislation trying to finance just parties or to give state money just to parties that have women representative. It was not approved. I support it. But frankly, why do you want to participate in a Haredi party? Why can't you run? No, really, it's a serious question. If what drives you is something that the Haredi party would not accept, maybe you should try and run for office in other parties that represents your views.
When there is a situation that the parties that around the government table say, I am a closed club for men, I think it's something bad in our state.
No, I started by saying that I supported the bill saying that the state support giving money to parties would be according to the representative of women in the party. I support it. That's one thing. Secondly, I said, I believe that we should all be part of, I don't like the idea of sectorial parties anyway in Israel, and therefore I said to her, to you, but I agree that the fact that there are parties without women in the Israeli parliament, it's a shame. I agree with you on this. I want to say something in Hebrew to, אני רוצה לענות לך.
באנגלית, אני מבינה אנגלית, אבל קשה לי...
אוקיי, בסדר, I can understand it. Firstly, in the negotiations, we didn't represent the issue of women here or there. It was more about how to achieve peace, talking about the borders, about final status issues that the status of women is not part of. Is not part of it. It's not a specific issue between us and the Palestinians. Here there is something that I want to say publicly. When I was nominated to be the chief negotiator on the Israeli side, some congratulated me, but I think that one of the women organizations said, well, she's a woman, but she doesn't support women empowerment. So what's the use of having her in the chief negotiator? I believe that each and every one of us, if being in a position, it's a message. It can be, excuse me, it's not me, but a role model for others, even without discussing women issues. And the final status agreement between Israel and the Palestinians, it's not, I want to have as part of the negotiations see more women, but this is not on the agenda. Because the disputes between us and the Palestinians, it's not the situation of women here and there. But I want to say also something to you as being a bridge, and this is something that I heard from an Israeli Arab, and I respect this, and I remember it. He said, you know what, I don't want to be a bridge, because bridge is something that people are walking over and live on the other side. And therefore, תודה, נשמה, בסדר. לא, תודה. אני אומרת אני דווקא לקחתי את זה במובן חיובי, שמי שאמר את זה, עזבי אותי מלהיות גשר, דורכים עליי, עוזבים אותי בצד השני, תטפלו בי כאזרח המדינה הזאת, וחוץ מזה תשיגו שלום עם בני העם שלי הפלסטינים, ואני רוצה להרגיש בצורה הזאת שאני יש לי את הכל כבר מסודר. גם יש מדינה לבני העם שלי, וגם אני אזרח שווה זכויות במדינת ישראל. אז אני לקחתי את זה, מאמינה בזה, אבל תודה שאת רוצה לתרום בזה.
Longer and be more durable, and also because of lots of reasons that bring communities with them and different approaches and all the sorts of things that we've touched on today. But it is hard, and I think that's why if we can have, the work that you're doing as a civil society organisation is really important. And I know it can be hard. I can't imagine in your situation, but I know that if things are looking bleak, that optimism that you talked about, that hope that I talked about, can feel very, very far away. But it's the thing that drives us, and it's the thing that really motivates us to keep going. So I absolutely, I can't, I don't, haven't been involved in the specific work that you're doing, but I'm trying to understand what you're making, the point that you're making there. Quotas. Somebody asked about quotas. Are there other countries around the world that have quotas? Yes, there are other countries that have quotas in their parliaments, and sometimes it works for all the reasons we've talked about here. Why can't women get elected for themselves? I'm sorry, I can't remember who asked this question, but it's a really interesting question. And when I'm not travelling around the world or in the UK for business, I live and work remotely in Islamabad, in Pakistan, and talking to women parliamentarians there about whether they were elected on protected seats or elected in their own right, and it's the same around in different parliamentary and democratic systems. It's a question that remains, I think. But again, if we collectively can show how good and what we can do and show that we can be elected in our own right, that's got to be something we can continue to aspire to. And the final point is up-and-coming women, which had my brain ticking and thinking, my goodness. And yes, I think it might sound a bit weird, but my answer is there are up-and-coming women everywhere. And you might not even know they're up-and-coming because maybe they don't know that they're up-and-coming, but they are doing amazing work in difficult circumstances, in challenging environments. And they're the women that we should all be looking out for, to support and bring along and look ahead to, because I think, we can get inspiration and from people all around us. So I'm not going to name names, I can think of some, but actually for all of us, just look around and think about those up-and-coming women in your sort of social environment and think how we can support them. Because that's what it's all about at the end of the day. It's about women supporting women and really trying to... I've got somebody telling me to stop. But thank you.
I want to add something on, בעברית על הנושא של שריון נשים. זה חשוב. צריך לעשות את זה כהבטחת ייצוג, שאם אישה לא נבחרת עד מקום מסוים, מקדמים אותה. זה נשמע שאנחנו לא צריכות את זה, אנחנו צריכות את זה. זאת הדרך, בעבר זאת הייתה הדרך להכריח מפלגות שזה יהיה בתוכם, זה חשוב. החלק שאותי צייר בקטע הזה היה שהיו כאלה שאמרו, טוב, סימנו ויש שם אישה על המקום. איזה אישה, מה אישה, זה כבר לא עניין אותם אחר כך. אבל זה נותן קרש קפיצה להרבה מאוד נשים, ואחר כך הן מוכיחות את עצמן בפרלמנט או בכנסת בגדול.
השאלה שלי, למה אנחנו באמת לא מצליחים לעשות משהו?
היום זה גם וגם. היום את יכולה למצוא נשים במפלגות שחלק נזקקו לקרש הקפיצה הזה וחלק נבחרו לבד. אבל זה ממש בסדר, לא צריך להרגיש לא נוח מזה.
So I'm just going to end this and say that we all hope we'll have more women in the parliament and more women in the world leaders and more women surrounding the prime minister. I just had to put that inside, sorry. Thank you very much.